The
All right, it is May 11th. It's the database team sync meeting, and we're talking about the CI builds migration timing. Jump to team topic, but that's okay. We can jump right into it. Jose's not going to be here, so we can come back to the one item that's in the InfraDev board. But Andreas, you were saying about the complexity of the CI build table and the length of time it'll take to migrate.
Yeah, so I didn't have enough time to look at this ahead of the call. I just wanted to post the progress on CI builds. Sits at 41%.
Mm-hmm.
Should probably take the time and sort of estimate when it finishes. But I'm starting to be concerned about the speed of this, especially knowing that we have other tables also in the queue that we still need to tackle.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if we should spend time on figuring out whether or not this is too slow for our case and what we can do about it. I think for that, if we find that it's too slow, CI builds is also a point of congestion right now in terms of we're having a lot of problems with us in production.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if we will be able to say increase the batch sizes on that. Probably not, based on the timings that I've seen. It may be feasible though to think about adding a second process that works on a different table. But I don't know if all this is necessary. It's just a feeling of mine that this is a little bit slow.
Yeah, it looks like it's hitting around 3% a day. Although today it might hit 4 by the end of the day from yesterday. So that would put us another 15 days out to complete. If it's only 3%, it's going to put us at 20 days for the remainder of the work.
Right.
Just on CI build alone. So it's concerning, but you said you're going to do some more research on that one, see if there's anything we can do.
one thing we should talk, we should think about now that we have the algorithm that automatically changes the values, is maybe we should be able to turn off the algorithm and manually set the values.
So that it remains stable over time.
Yeah, so let's say that we wanted to increase it. We cannot do so without changing the algorithm right now. So maybe just a random idea. For such cases or other cases, we may also want to add a flag on the batch background migrations table that will say, yeah, for this one, just keep it where we have it. I don't think that this is the case for CI builds, as Andrea said, but in general, just a random idea.
Yeah, I'm just hesitant a bit about CI builds because we do have these incidents going on with the CI queuing, and that is directly related to that table getting a lot of churn. So I'm hesitant to just crank it up in terms of batch size, especially knowing that the timings we see they are already quite different than the other tables that we had, and also quite high. So,
and this is the one table that we should be very careful about. After that, we should be able to go faster, and we only have one big table left after that, the one with the 5 billion records.
What's the other big table, Jonas?
It's a satellite table. I have to find it out. Do you recall by heart, Andreas?
I can look it up. Don't worry about it.
It's one of the CI builds satellites. It has 5 billion records.
Metadata table?
No. The metadata table is one of the core ones.
We already did artifacts.
The trace chunks, perhaps. That's
yeah.
The one with the composite key.
Let's see. We have trace sections, pipelines, trace chunks, runner section are all the priority, all tied for number 3 on the most important ones that we should migrate.
I think trace chunks has 5 billion records. That's the bigger one. And then builds, what was the build sections? That is another fun one where we don't have a single column primary key to patch over. So that's we haven't had that before, so that's still to be seen how that works in production.
Okay.
So all that is saying basically, should we be nervous about seeing that CI builds go on for the next 2 weeks while we have a lot of tails that are still pending that we need to touch?
Let's check back in on Thursday. Although Andreas, did you say you can't make it Thursday? I saw some cancellations.
There's a public holiday in Germany on Thursday. Yeah.
Oh, right. Never mind. Giannis and I can check in on Thursday, and then maybe we try and crank it up over the weekend within reasonable specs. I mean, I know we have the auto balancing, but maybe we can try some experiments if we think we have some headroom over the weekend to turn it up and get some progress there. But,
in order to do so, we would have to have an update that would turn off the algorithm.
There is a feature flag for that, so
we can just just turn turn it off in general. That's a solution. That's the MVC.
And just to share, so I think the system saturation is getting slightly better. Let me show my screen. I think we probably have some headroom to swallow up or eat up the system resource. This is the saturation, primary saturation. If you look at this green line, that's about the trend. That's not exactly the trend, but that's very close to a trend curve. You can see it's slightly down. This is the main A's. We switched over to PG12. It looks like the peak is also lower than the other peaks. So the saturation looks slightly better. We can use the system more aggressively a little bit. And this is what Andrew developed to show the Linux kernel job wait time. So it's also much better than the past. In the past, PG11, those nodes, the CPU wait was like 0.3, 0.4 here. But here now we are below 0.15 after the switch. So all the system metrics are looking better than the PG11 time. So we probably can stretch the system a little bit more.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. Do you have those links you can share?
Yeah, it's in the exit criteria of this doc. So I'll post it here.
Thanks.
So I think we probably can be more aggressive during the weekends, stretch the system a little bit more to see how that goes. In general, I see the system capacity is better.
Yep. All right, we'll check in on Thursday. See what the daily build looks like, or daily progress looks like. See what we're projecting, and then you can formulate a plan on Thursday. All right. Let's see, going back up. The team topics. So Jose's not going to be here now. The one issue that did come up for us to pick up is this load balancing issue. I think Andreas, you've seen this one before. We talked a bit about it. Is there anybody that can pick this up in 14.0 since we are near the end of 13.12?
Kind of a priority question, I think, for me. Been mainly spending time on the CI queuing incident. Mm-hmm. And I don't know where this falls in terms of priority. So I would have to look.
I'll put it into 14.0 for now. It is active, so it can be picked up. Yeah, I think the CI incidents are higher priority at the moment. All right. Back, so we already talked about that one. So the timescale DB prototype. So Nick offered to create a timescale DB prototype. It's related to the time decay blueprint. I have a sync meeting with him later on today. He thought that he could crank out a proof of concept on this pretty quickly. Like I think he said within a day or two. So I'm just going to sync up with him and what the goal of his proof of concept is and how it helps with the team. Be honest, I invited you if it works with your time. If not, we can record it. You can catch up with it later.
No, I'll join. I'll join.
Okay. And Ollie, if you want to join, I'd be happy to invite you. Andreas, I figured it's too late in your day, so I didn't invite you, and I'll make sure to record it. Like I said, and we'll post it later.
That'd be awesome. Especially, I think we talked about timescale before, and for me, it's still like not clear enough how we would benefit from time series features optimizations. Like I understand timescale DB is primarily targeted at time series data, whereas our data model is typically not. So that would be the big question mark that I have in terms of timescale DB, and if we can clear it up, that would be awesome.
Yep. Okay. You had the next item, Andreas.
Yes, this is related to the CI queuing incident, and I've only linked one of these to, I think, one of the more recent ones. If you look at the issue tracker, then this goes back until March, I think. So we've been seeing this on and off many times. And there is a database query involved that is becoming famous as the big query. I think everybody knows that by now. We drilled into the reasons for seeing the slowdown, and we did also ship indexing improvements that were picked up. But unfortunately, there is one piece missing, or something that holds us back from using those optimizations. That is ultimately related to basically the fill factor of the table, or the ability to use what we call hot updates in the database. And I would like to make an experiment where we change the fill factor for the table. That is basically saying that we reserve some space and pages for the updates that we're seeing. So we're seeing a lot of updates on those records. And that's what's causing the problem on the database side. I think this is literally the last band-aid that I'm aware of that can help us in this situation, so that we don't see this as often or as expressed. And that's something that I would like to do this week if we can. I'm gonna open a change issue for that, so that we change the fill factor in production, let it sit for 1 or 2 days, and see how that affects the query performance. That is something that is only applied for new data or new pages being created in the database. So that's a change that we can also revert without causing any trouble, in a sense. So yeah, and that's what I'm looking still for comments if you have any. And then longer term, I heard from Grzegorz that he's actually starting to work on the change in the data model today. So that's gotten priority now. And the idea is that we basically extract the pending build information and separate this from the very long history of builds that we have in the database. And that's the way forward. Everything else is just a band-aid, I think.
Yeah. On the pending builds queue data structure, is that something that shrinks over time? So it's an ephemeral. The rows are ephemeral. It doesn't just build up, right? We don't just continue to build up pending rows. After something's done, it gets deleted and goes, okay.
Yeah. To illustrate that, we have, I think, about 1.5 terabytes of data in this CI builds table today. That's our history, even more perhaps, plus indexes on that. And then when you extract the pending and the running builds, you end up with a table that is 200 megabytes. And this is really what we're interested in this case, right? For CI queuing, you want to know what is depending on the running builds.
Yeah.
And the way we do this is basically look at those 1.5 terabytes right now. And that's what's causing the problem.
Yep.
And then queuing in Postgres is not nice because of MVCC. So that doesn't align very well with Postgres, but it is at least a step forward where we separate those things. And the table size should remain relatively the same over time, basically, so it's not increasing.
Awesome. That'd be great to see that.
Mhm.
All right. If there's nothing else, you can jump over to the Billboard. What closed this week? Like Heinrich closed the batch background migration jobs, records not being updated. Is there anything to cover on that one? All right.
I think we retried the failed jobs. And that was working, but I haven't checked if none of these remain. That's something that I should do and take a note.
Okay. Looks like Cross got us ready for CI build trace chunks. Andreas, you got the next one?
Yeah, we covered that. That was basically the partial indexes for the CI queuing problem.
Right. And Alex is not here for that one, so jump over to in review. Read mostly. Any updates on that one, on the pattern? Are you waiting for anything on that one, Andreas?
No, only for myself,
okay.
to be honest.
Okay. See, Heinrich's not here, so I saw a lot of good conversation about adding the batch migration information to the admin panel. He's coordinating with Sunjin on how it looks. Alex reporting data state and clone ID. Any updates on that one?
I think I'm not really sure if you merged it, but I think it's ready. I think perhaps it's for review.
I think we'll have to update it a little bit because the MR to artifacted directory was merged first, and that one artifacts a few additional files. So we just need to move those files into rebase and move those files into the appropriate directory.
Right, that makes sense. And Alex is currently on PTO, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Giannis, did you ever hear back from Jerry on the time decay? I know he's been heads down on the PG12 upgrade, so it's fine. And there's nothing waiting on this really.
No, there's nothing waiting. I may do one last small update, but the document won't change. It's not like there is anything new, and the database maintainers have reviewed it. So yeah, let's give some space to Jerry. I think that he had a full schedule with the Postgres 12 update, and I may ping him late this week.
Okay. And this blueprint's not blocking any work at the moment, so we can give them the space. So it's fine. Thanks. Ali, get the full clear.
Reviews are progressing on that one.
Okay. Let's see. So Cross is out for the rest of the week. Is there anything in here that needs to be picked up by Heinrich or anybody else so that we're not blocked on these top two?
I think it would be great if we ship releasing the primary key migrations to self-hosted. So managing to put that into the current release would be good.
Mm-hmm.
So that things start to happen on self-hosted as well.
Okay. I can ask Heinrich if he can pick those up.
Yeah, Crash has added a quick summary in our channel.
All right. Is there anything to update on this bug?
Yeah, I gave the green light so that we can move with Crash plan.
Okay.
And yeah.
Thanks, Giannis. It's been
Andreas, you got the next 4. So dashboard for batch migrations.
Yeah, there was a problem with the Prometheus metrics for the batch migrations that's been addressed. So we, in theory, we can get those metrics on a dashboard now. I think I realized I have too many things open, so that's why this is still there. CI build trace sections, that has the problem where we need to decide what to do with the non, or the composite primary key, basically. Priority wise, I think that is not necessary to do until we have capacity to run it in production, which is apparently still like 2 weeks out.
Mhm.
But until then, we should probably decide on that one. Testing the migration pipeline. There was something we discussed, I think, last week. We would like to have a mechanic so that we can easily test changes that we make to the testing pipeline. So we can test them ahead of time before we merge stuff. And I started to look into that by creating a fork of GitLab onto the ops instance. Mm-hmm. So that we can have also example merge requests with dummy migrations and that kind of stuff. And we would see also the feedback being posted on those MRs so that we don't clutter the original project. But I've only, there is a couple of pieces missing where we then need to support posting comments on the ops instance and also on GitLab.com. And so these things still need to be added.
Okay.
And index, this is context is re-indexing. We did have a situation with re-indexing over the weekend where dropping an existing index was basically being blocked by an auto vacuum process that was happening at the same time. And that was also not stopping for good reasons. But that basically leads to, this is not a problem, but it leads to an alert for the EOC reporting about the long-running transaction. So because we see this transaction wait basically forever, and it's relatively straightforward to address that.
Ali, you get the next one.
So this one is basically about creating a comment when we kick off the migration testing pipeline so we can have immediate feedback that the pipeline will run or is running. I have it working. I need to test it and polish it up, but it's in good shape.
Nice.
Andreas, you got the last one.
We have some kind of query parsing going on because when we see an exception in production, then that is related to SQL, then we want to send this information to Sentry, but we don't want to send the full query. We want to normalize it as to remove the sensitive parts. And we use pgquery for that, which is an awesome gem for Ruby to parse Postgres queries. But we were using a version that wasn't supporting, I think, Postgres 12 features, if I'm not mistaken. And that failed. Basically, we created a covering index, which is relatively new syntax, and that failed. And then it was basically hidden by a failure to normalize the query, and that was caused by the pgquery version. So this is just about updating the pgquery version.
Okay. Is there anything folks are working on that are not listed on here? All right, take that as a collective no.
So a quick update on the jobs that we retried, so that Andreas mentioned. So we don't have any jobs from other migrations. So all other migrations other than CI builds seem to be done. But we have we have 23 failed jobs in CI builds, but it's okay as long as we can. But we still have this problem where we keep them on status 1. You know, so we try to fix that.
Still running.
Yeah, so they are still not for whatever reason. We were not sure, and Henrik tried to make a fix there. So that they are labeled correctly as failed and with a finished stat. This is not the case for most of those jobs, but at least we know that when we retry them, they are correctly retried and finished, which is good.
Sounds good.
All right. Anything of note on the triage board this week, Andreas?
I think the remaining issues, oh, they're actually gone. I haven't checked. Investigate timeline of automatic partition creation. I think that's also kind of a support issue, if I remember that correctly, for someone with a strange database migration. Right. I think I wasn't quite sure how we, how we deal with those things. Going back to how do we support anybody without paying for support?
Yeah, that's remarkably enough one of the reasons why I joined to discuss that. So I'll probably tackle this. I've got a paying customer interested in this issue, so it's my intention when I've got time to figure this out and then check whether or not I've got it right.
Right now, remember that was different, and we had a couple of issues that were, I think, coming from non-paying customers. But this one is different for sure. That would be interesting to find out. If I can help with that, let me know. We should definitely know why those partitions are not being created.
Yeah. In fact, I remember what this one. Yeah, this one's been 2 emergencies because we backfilled the missing partition on the first emergency, and then 1 month later it needed doing again. So
yeah, if that's not working, then it's on repeat.
Yeah.
No.
So I created 4 this time around, so I've got a bit of time.
But this is only one customer experiencing that.
Yeah, but it would be really good to understand how they got into the situation, because it appears to be a new install. So yeah, I want to understand the corner case they've found.
Yeah, and we also have now the webhook logs migrations, and yeah, we may have the same pain with webhook logs at some point. Yeah.
Right. Second one, created it last week, finding that we have one index in production that is marked as invalid, which shouldn't be the case. And this goes back to our migration helpers not really paying attention to the invalid flag for indexes. So for example, when you create a new index, it's being created concurrently. So, and in this mode, it can actually fail and leave behind an invalid index. And then when we retry the migration, it would just pretend that this index already exists, which it does, but it doesn't pay attention that it's actually invalid. So it would skip the index creation, and then after all, we're left with an invalid index. And it's the first time we're seeing that. I think we should be looking into that. I think what we can do about it. And there is a related production issue where we fix the invalid index. And lastly, RubyDNS. There was a posting on the development channel. I think Ruby seems to have problems with long-running processes and DNS lookups. And that is an essential part of our database load balancing strategy, because we use console DNS to figure out which replicas are still available. I just would like to review that. This is either not affecting us, or we have to fix it.
I think I saw that it's the bug was introduced in 2.7.3, and I think we're on 2.7.2. So I believe it's not affecting us. Not sure, but
yeah, that would be good to know before we upgrade.
I can find the Slack message and post it on that issue.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks, Owen. And I'll catch up with Heinrich later, make sure he's got the triage rotation covered. So if we're going in alphabetical order, he's up next. I don't know that there's anything. I haven't looked at this recently, so. Hmm. I'll have to review this later. It's not info. Ben, is there anything else you wanted to cover with us today?
Yeah, I wanted to cover off that issue raised around support-like issues being, well, support-like issues, issues that are actually support tickets.
Mhm.
So certainly if it's a paying customer, then get them to raise a ticket. That's fairly simple.
Mhm.
If they're not a paying customer, then that's quite interesting because, you know, we don't provide support for paying customers in support. And I was curious talking about this with my manager actually just before this meeting, whether there was guidance in engineering for where the line is between investigating issues in the product and providing support, because you have a team to do that. And then the team has rules about who we don't provide support for. So, and I do appreciate that some of these, I mean, one of the issues that's in your boards, yeah, that's a fairly complicated piece of work. Not a great place for that user to be in, but you can certainly imagine there are going to be situations where users of our product do all sorts of crazy things, like downgrading when they shouldn't and stuff like that. And why would we provide support to get them out of that mess? You know, that's what your backup's for. Bye-bye. You know, I mean, it's pretty much what we'd have to tell a paying customer, frankly, if they upgraded the product, did a load of migrations, and then try and downgraded it again, and it didn't work. Well, your options are back out or back out. It's just a question of which recovery point you use.
One of the extreme cases that we've seen recently was where customers would basically change the database in certain ways on their own. Like remember a customer having a GitLab old schema and a GitLab schema, and then things were not working out because that is kind of unexpected. And that's been popping up a few times, I think, where it was clear that they were trying to manage their database somehow, but that is sort of unexpected or not in line with what we expect from the application side. That was causing problems. And I have the same instinct, like would also say that this voids your warranty kind of thing. And it's also hard for us to deal with it because we don't have insight into their systems.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. If it's a paying customer, and going forwards, that pretty much means premium or ultimate, then they get upgrade support. So they give us their plan. We review their plan. We tell them, no, you really don't want to do that. That'll break the database. And then if it blows up, then they've got support, and we know what they did because they followed their plan. And we tested, we checked they had a backup plan as well. So paying customers are increasingly all in a good place because of the direction of travel on what tiers are available. But yeah, I'm certainly mindful off the back of that issue and the other stuff I've seen going on in the database space. It doesn't make sense for database engineers to be down rabbit holes fixing these problems at the moment. You've got other rabbit holes to go diving down that affect more customers.
A whole network of them. To your previous question, is there guidance on like differentiating how to support different customers, whether paying, non-paying? I don't know that there is. I don't know that there's like I would almost call it like triage documentation. If an issue submitted and then have like a decision tree. Does anybody else know of where in our documentation where? Yeah, okay. I mean, if someone reports a bug, then we do need to spend some time investigating the validity of it, right? To see if it's truly a bug. And then from there, it would go to, okay, this isn't a bug. This is read the manual problem. And then figure out, that's probably where we would send it to you, Ben, and then, or we should send it to you and then figure out from there if it's a paying customer or not. And go from there. So that, I mean, that's the high level triage that I would put into it if we don't have any other guidance.
Yeah.
Can I add something? It's a little bit more complicated because we are also an open source company. We have an open source product. So everyone in GitLab and all the backend engineers we say to everyone, and that's our culture, to engage and with the community. So when someone comes, everyone is open. It's open for anyone to open issues and talk with the GitLab team. And I think that it's in our culture to engage with anyone starting an issue. So that's the problem there sometimes between engaging with the community and solving production problems with somebody doing something crazy. And this is somewhere where we have to figure out and think about what's the line. But I think that we should keep on engaging with the community because GitLab is an open source product. But yeah, we have to draw a line somewhere. And maybe we have to also, as a database group, define the line on where we stop.
I find it really difficult to engage with the community when there's a bug report and things are breaking. You obviously we engage, and that I think we should definitely continue doing that. But I find it difficult when it becomes obvious that, well, they were rather creative on the database side, and this is unexpected for us. How do we? I think the difficulty is how do we communicate that. That they are actually in a situation that we can't do anything about it. I think I haven't seen us doing that on those issues, but rather we would invest a lot of time and come up with very detailed plans on how they can sort of mitigate the situation, even though we don't have access to their system. So it's also a bit of a risk for us doing that, because then we might just be wrong about guessing how their system looks like, and then they have a plan, they're executing a plan and maybe making things worse, and we put up the plan. So I find it difficult and especially difficult to communicate the fact that this is nothing that we can deal with really. And I was wondering, do we need to be more verbose about telling folks that if they needed to do something to the GitLab database in any way, then this is likely to cause problems. For me, I think that is rather obvious, I think, but we do have installations that are kind of creative about it.
I'm not sure what the question is there. I was gonna go back to what Giannis was saying about we should engage, and I don't totally agree. I think there's a distinction between like submitting code for review. That's an easy one where we should engage because we are open source. But when they're submitting bugs, I think there's a differentiation there, especially when it's obvious that it's self-inflicted, right? And that's when we redirect and say, hey, send it to support and maybe let Ben differentiate, like, okay, paid versus not paid. And that's where Ben can start selling, like, hey, you could get better support if you bought a license, or here's the manual, please read from there. So I think for me, that's the differentiation. If it's code submission, absolutely engage. If it's bug, we need to do a bit of triage and then figure out where we need to engage and where we need to redirect to support.
And how exactly do we redirect?
Ben, what's the guidance on that
one? So I've put a link there to what it does say in the handbook, which is still doesn't really address the issue, which is how do you tell the difference between a bug and something else? And I get it all the time. You go down a rabbit hole investigating a problem. Is it a bug in the product? Oh, yeah. They can't, there's a communication breakdown. Is it a bug in the product, or is it because their corporate proxy is misconfigured? In which case it's not a problem. Doesn't really tackle that, but I guess when push comes to shove, if something's looking like it's a support issue and it's something specific with the state their database is in, and the main purpose of the request is to fix their database, then yeah, I mean, feel free to ping me and I'll tell them they don't have support.
Should we, to get specific on Andrea's question, if we want to redirect, do we just assign them to you and then we can figure out from there? You mentioned
Yeah,
pinging.
assign ping. I I don't really work in issues. I work in Zendesk, and anything.
Okay.
My workflow, my backup to that is emails, and that we all know how good a workflow anything based on email is. So just make lots of noise, and I'll try and tackle it in one pass, basically.
Okay, gotcha.
My previous question was, do we need something that we can point to saying that if you mess with the database, then things will break?
Yes.
I don't know if that is obvious. Really don't. But in cases where it happens, it might be useful to have something documented that says, "Don't mess with the database," right?
I mean, I think we're starting to see some specific things customers are doing, like putting things in the default schema that GitLab doesn't expect to be there. We've got an example of some sort of auditing thing where it looks like they've literally Googled how to audit changes, and it says do this thing in the public schema, and now GitLab's tripping over it. So yeah, I think if we're going to learn anything from these issues, it's to start to compile a list of things not to do, some assumptions that are made that you shouldn't break, stuff like that. And I think the place to put that is going to be fairly early on in our documentation. We've got like a section that describes the prerequisites for GitLab that includes things like the database plugins. Fairly high up in our documentation about, say, external databases or the use of the database in a product, it should say these are the following things you shouldn't do. And yeah, I'm absolutely happy to contribute to that, help out with that, whatever.
So should we be opinionated that they should add nothing in the public schema and the GitLab HQ database? Because this is still open. So we can switch to that mode and write somewhere that they should not add new schemas, they should not add new plugins or whatever, and that GitLab owns that database and we can drop it at any time, for example.
Yep.
Yeah, it seems like something that we could iterate on quickly and just add bullet points as we discover them. What would be the best location for that guidance?
Well,
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm happy to take an action to go and suggest somewhere or suggest some places, and we can knock that around.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thanks, Ben. That's it for the agenda. Any other topics folks want to cover today? Nope. All right. Hope everybody has a good rest of the day.
Bye-bye.
See you.
See you.